Hey, hi, and hello, I'm Mazriel, and welcome to my Pit of Saron Dungeon Journal. Pit is a 3-boss open layout dungeon featuring magical frost and shadow damage with a considerable number of debuffs built just to bust your tank. Seriously, this is going to make you yearn for a return of elemental resistant gear. Upon start, we're immediately tasked with a simple dungeon mechanic. Save 6 prisoners, which are seen as these large yellow dots on your minimap. These will help shape the route, but Pit is so large and open that exact pathing will likely change week to week. So, as with all dungeon journal entries, we're going to keep the focus on individual mobs and their abilities. With that, let's go down the list of what you'll face on your way to your first boss. Gloombound Shadebringers are a simple caster mob that spam Shadow Bolt. Keep it on a kick rotation. Quarry Tormentors have the passive Tormenting Blade that make melee attacks deal bonus shadow damage if the target is above 65% health. Curse of Torment is a healing absorb and a dot that can be dispelled, so you're gonna want to keep it off as much as you can. Rotting Ghouls inflict rotting strikes with every melee, reducing player health by 1% per stack. This is gonna get dangerous for tanks if you're pulling a lot of them, so watch yourself. Leaping Geist will periodically cast Leaping Maul, which targets a random player and deals AoE damage. DPS you want to loosely spread to minimize the impact. Mirjar Graveblades cast Dark Rupture, a stomp that ruptures darkness underneath a player, inflicting 30 shadow damage to anyone within 5 yards. Iced, stay spread to keep yourself alive, just watch you're not butt pulling into other packs. Frostbane Slash is a tank buster that hits for physical and frost damage and applies a debuff that increases frost damage taken by 100%. There's a lot of frost damage mobs here, so mind what you're pulling with this guy. Wrathbone Enforcers cast Sunderstrike, which deals physical damage and increases physical damage taken by 20%. Seeing the pattern by now, tanks, you need to be mindful of what you're pulling. You're gonna have a rough time staying alive. This is absolutely a dungeon built for us. Death Whisper Necrolytes are a high DPS priority due to their passive Deathless Bond. Nearby undead cannot die until this mob is killed, and surprise, almost everything here is an undead. It needs to go, and it needs to go fast. Risen Soldier cast Charging Slash, which charges the player and deals physical damage. Generally, with a mechanic like this, staying within melee should prevent it from going off. Dreadpulse Lich, a powerful caster that needs to be pulled with intention. Icy Blast, a bolt that chunks the tank's health. This should be on a kick rotation. Don't let it go off. Torrent of Misery barrages a player with stacking shadow damage. This is going to be a healer mechanic. You got to make sure to keep your guys alive. Dread Pulse. Under 50% health, the caster pulses shadow energy every 2 seconds that inflicts shadow damage to players within 60 yards. This is when it's the highest priority for DPS and healers. You need to be ready for the ramp and damage DPS. You gotta get this thing dead. Lumbering Plague Horrors are large mobs that spew puddles around the fight. Light Splatter creates nature puddles that damage players standing in them. Plague Frenzy is an enrage that increases the frequency of Light Splatter. Try to keep a soothe on CD for this one if you can. Plunge Talon Gargoyles are a high priority mob for DPS and they need to be killed quickly. Plunge Grip lifts a player in the air, and if the cast finishes, they will drop the player, stunning them. You can CC the gargoyle to stop this, and you should try to do so ASAP, because if it goes off, that player is stunned the whole way down, so they're taking full damage from the fall, they're likely to die. Stone Skin is a shield automatically cast alongside Plunge Grip, which is why DPS need to be focusing these guys. The Iceborne Proto-Drake casts Icy Strikes. Melee attacks cause additional frost damage. Frost Breath is a frontal cone that needs to be dodged. You are frequently pulling these alongside Mirjar Graveblades that might even be riding them, so be careful tanks, this is a lot of frost damage. Rhinebone Cold Race spam Ice Bolt, which should be on a kick rotation. Healers, you'll want to watch for Permeating Cold, which is a magic debuff and slow, and this can make fights and hazards very dangerous, so make sure to try to keep it cleansed. And that's it for all the trash found within Pit. You can fight either the first 2 bosses in any order you like, and it will really come down to your route, which is going to likely be built around lust timings. Ick and Krick is a multi-boss fight with a shared health bar, so the pair is at their most vulnerable when together. Krick starts the fight with Shade Shift, a party-wide AoE that deals shadow damage and applies a dot. A perimeter of circles will appear around the arena, and Shades of Krick will be summoned and start casting Shadowbind, a shadow damage channel that also slows targets. This can and should be kicked. They'll also spam Death Bolt, which chunks for shadow damage. Cannons should be kicked as well. You have a minute to kill each shade before they explode for lethal damage, so the tank should ensure they're moving Ick around to maximize cleave. If you kill all the shades, then keep the duo together as long as you can. Blight Smash is an AoE tank buster that also drops a large puddle. This needs to be baited away from the fight. Plague Explosion, a party-wide AoE that also drops puddles around the arena. The fight gets messy, and while you want to avoid being in a puddle as much as possible, it is also a bit of a healer mechanic. Get him Ick. Krick mounts Ick, forcing periodic fixates at differing party members and spewing puddles. Fixated players need to try and bait Ick on the perimeter, and the puddles target players, so they should be baited in a way that keeps the fight area clean. Like I said, it gets messy, so do your best. And that's the entire fight. Everyone has an important job to do, so lock in as you'll be rotating through these phases until the duo is dead. Forgemaster Garfrost is a unique encounter that requires smart mechanic baits in order to survive. Healers, you need to mind your mana, as Siphoning Chill is a passive buff that deals a constant wave of frost damage throughout the fight. Throw Saronite is where Garfrost targets 2 players with large circles and then tosses chunks of Saronite at them. Targeted players, you want to spread out in order to avoid overlapping with anyone, and you need to mind that these chunks will soon be shattered and drop a large puddle, so they need to be placed in a way that keeps the fight arena clear. Ore Breaker is a physical tank buster that also shatters Saronite chunks. Tanks need to overlap their circle with a chunk, and upon shattering, Saronite fragments will scatter across the field, and you need to dodge the small circles. Do not break all of your Saronite, as you need to keep one chunk on the field at all times in order to survive Glacial Overload. Garfrost will target his forge and poses a stacking cold damage debuff. Players need to hide behind a Saronite chunk in order to break line of sight and prevent these stacks from building up. Important note, I did notice in the beta that a VDH in meta was actually taller than the chunk, which caused them to take damage. Healers, it'll be smart to keep an eye out for any line of sight trickery that could cause someone to take excess damage. Cryo Stomp deals physical AoE damage, destroys ore chunks, and sends cryo shards outward. Dodge everything as it falls down. And really, that's the fight. Healers need to be mindful of the rot, DPS to mind their feet, and everyone needs to be smart with these mechanics. Glaciath is a mini-boss, and it uses Cryo Burst, which targets everyone with individual circles that damages and drops large puddles. Players should spread out and ensure they don't cut off their way through the cave. Focused Guard is a frontal shield. Players need to step behind it in order to damage Glaciath. He will also pulsate cold damage while channeling, so healers, you gotta be ramped up and ready. Now, in the beta, Glaciath didn't give any mob count, so make sure you're already at 100% before fighting it. Scourgelord Tyrannus is a dangerous cleave boss that'll have you fighting hordes of undead throughout the encounter. He starts the fight with Bone Infusion, a massive AoE that damages and applies a dot to the party. This will also infuse piles of nearby bones, and take note of these. Rime Blast are AoE frost attacks cast from the dragon flying above. Targeted players need to bait these onto the infused bone piles in order to freeze them. Now, it bears repeating, as this is the most important mechanic of the fight. You have to bait Rime Blast onto the infused bone piles and freeze as many as you can. You'll see why soon. Frostspit. Rime Fang will periodically attack players with frost damage. Scourgelord's Brand, a magical tank buster knockback that also applies a massive Shadow Vuln debuff. Immediately following the knockback, Tyrannus will cast Scourgelord's Reckoning. Tyrannus leaps to the tank and causes massive AoE damage. This needs to be dodged. It also makes the knockback one of the few worth eating, as it helps create distance between the tank and the party. Death's Grasp. Tyrannus summons AoE circles that damage and slows players. They just need to be dodged before they go off. Now here's the real danger. Army of the Dead raises Rotlings and Plague Spreaders from bone piles. Rotlings are summoned from all bone piles during Army of the Dead, and they have rotting strikes, so their melee attacks are going to cause a stacking max health debuff. Defenses are necessary. Healers, you want to watch your tank in case they need an external. Scourge Plague Spreaders are summoned from the infused bone piles during Army of the Dead. Plague Bolt is a nature bolt that needs to be kicked on rotation. What's truly dangerous is Festering Pulse, and AoE damage is pulsed for the entire party as long as the Plague Spreader is alive. These things have to get killed. They are absolutely a priority for DPS, or you're gonna wipe. Tanks, you have to get to work to get an aggro quickly in order to stay alive. And that's the fight. You will cycle through this a couple of times, so make sure you're ready for it and try to make sure you're not running out of your CDs. I hope you guys liked the video. Leave a like and subscribe down below if you did, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.